Really? You really love me that much? No, it must be pretend. You must want something. You must be working an angle. But really? Welcome back to the Sexual Wholeness Revival Podcast. We're so glad you joined us today. And I have a topic that I know everyone is going to be asking themselves questions, scratching their head, doing a little bit rear view mirror checking. And hey, that's a perfect segue because I recently bought a new car. Now, this whole episode is not about my new car, but it was so interesting because we bought the car and then I learned how to drive it. I'm thinking that's backwards. Don't we usually learn something and then make that big step? But of course, you have to get used to a new car before you could ever figure it all out. And today I'm going to give some information up front that you might not have until the end if you were doing this in a sequential process. So get ready. These are 4 questions that define the quality of your sexual intimacy. These 4 questions. I'm going to read them now. We'll dive into them. Hey, I'm even going to bring them up at the end because I think these are game changers. The questions are, number 1, is it safe for me to be known? Number 2, will you still love me if I disappoint you? Number 3, can I express what I need? Number 4, do I matter to you? Woo! These are deep. And what I have found is that issues regarding sex are usually not about frequency and technique and your differences with desire. They go much deeper to these emotional connection questions. And that is where we're going to focus today. So my overarching question for this episode is, what do you learn about emotional connection through each stage of your life that ultimately helps with sexual intimacy?
That is such a great question. And I'm really excited to dive into this with you because I think breaking it down into stages is really helpful to understand and maybe even be able to lessen people's overwhelm because it just sometimes can feel overwhelming. But if we can break it down into stages and figure out maybe where the disconnect or the broken pieces, it will help in the other areas. So let's start with early childhood. What is learned? I find this so fascinating. I'm so glad I get to ask this question. Okay. What is learned about emotional connection in those years? Because it's vital. It's important.
It is. It's crucial. And I have grandchildren in this age bracket, so it's very fresh for me, this 0 to 5. Hey, I've got something right now that you don't. Amazing, because usually this is switched. But that 0 to 5, the foundation is being laid for safety and attachment. And that's just like a mic drop right there. Safety and attachment. What does that look like? This tiny little baby, this little toddler, this even kindergartner begins to know my needs matter. I can trust people. My emotions are welcome, and someone comforts me if I'm distressed. I think about when my grandson, he's finishing up his nap. I can hear him in the other room. He knows I am going to come there and help him get out of the bed. He absolutely knows that with certainty. And he's only 2, but we've been building all of those things. So that, it seems simple, and yet this is how you're formed Do I see
Right.
myself in my parents, my caregivers' eyes? It is the foundation of it all.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I just want to add that, as parents, when our kids have these moments of doing something that scares us, I remember as a parent, my child doing something like climbing up on top of a counter, going for a knife, and out of my fear to save their lives,
Mm,
it came across as anger, and it created this feeling of I'm bad in my child because they don't that's part of the process. And so as a parent, my job was to first get myself under control and then come in behind that and go, I'm not mad. I'm so sorry that scared you. Mommy was scared. And to help them
mm.
process that, because that memory then can shape and impact the foundation for safety and attachment, all of the things that you just listed that are so
Yeah.
vital in this stage. So, someone comforts me when I'm distressed. There's a lot to that when you grew up in a generation with parents that said, tough it out, suck it
Mm.
up. These are really important moments, and they transfer into adulthood and into our adult relationships. And so this is a really great place to start in your journey in asking these questions. What do these emotional connection skills then look like in marriage?
That's right. We're pulling the thread through. What happens in those 0 to 5 years? How does it affect us as we mature and then ultimately are married and walking through sexual intimacy? So when you feel safe, you can be vulnerable. And let's just translate that. Sexual intimacy is the most vulnerable that you can be. It's happening with your body. We believe by God's design it's happening with your emotions, and spiritually, every part of you is present. It takes a lot to be that vulnerable. So right away you could be thinking, yeah, vulnerability is tough for me, and maybe there is some truth here as far as things that you learned when you were younger. Another point is being able to trust your spouse's intentions. And it's one thing when you doubt yourself, which we will get to, but doubting your spouse, because if you did not have that security with your parents, with your family as a young child, then maybe you don't have experiences with that place of security.
Right.
So it would be
Yeah.
natural for you to doubt. But of course, that causes a big snowball as to if you can't receive that love from them, then they might even feel rejected by you. I mean, everything is backwards at that point. Another one is receiving affection without suspicion. So my spouse wants to hug me, wants to encourage me, wants to begin being romantic. But if I'm going, oh no, do they really want me? Are they really being here for me? If their questions are there, then it's going to change how you accept that, how you respond.
Right.
Also, we look at feeling comfortable with emotional and physical closeness. So if your family growing up was not affectionate, even just those big bear hugs where you knew I could just nestle my face in my mother or my father's arms and just that was safety. If you did not have that, then this place of ultimate closeness can be scary and
Right.
uncomfortable. We know ultimately that sexual intimacy flourishes when a person feels safe. And this idea of feeling safe is far more than are there the right locks on your doors. It is the emotional safety, which can be difficult to define, but that is why we're breaking this down into little bite-sized descriptions.
Yeah, that is so good. And it is safety. We've talked about safety in the past, and people can't heal if they don't feel safe. And
Yeah.
so that is such an important piece in intimacy and in your most closest relationships. So what could a spouse who didn't learn safety struggle with?
And this is where we want to start to encourage you. We know it is almost more common to have not learned these skills as a child than it is to have learned them. So don't feel like, oh, I've just got to throw up my hands. I didn't have a good childhood. I'm ruined. I can never recover from this. No, let me just set the record straight now, because these are skills. And maybe they were learned naturally for some children, but they can be learned intentionally at any age. We are going to give some description here so you might recognize if this is happening in your experience, but just remember there are ways that you can learn these, and we're going to get to that. So if you have that fear of vulnerability, it may be difficult for you to let down your guard. Whether it is in what you are sharing, personally deep private thoughts, or if it's what you will tolerate your spouse to share. I've worked with couples and one spouse says, oh, they're just too much for me. I just can't handle it. I just can't go there. And they have closed the door even before their spouse has a chance to press in for the closeness. So that is a sign. Another one is avoidance, and that looks like a lot of different things. That could be completely avoiding sex. I know there are stories of women making up excuses, and I'm so sorry that that has been made fun of, because so many of those reasons are very legitimate. But if that is the normal, is the pattern to make up an excuse to not have sex with your spouse, maybe there's a deeper issue and you are avoiding them because it seems too intense and you're uncomfortable and you don't have the wherewithal to process it. Now, what's interesting, you might be avoiding because fear of something bad that could occur, rejection, repeating a difficult scenario from your past. You might also fear something good that's happening, because if you're not used to that wonderful support from another person who loves you just like you are, wow, that place of acceptance can be scary. And you would think, but this is what I always wanted. It still can feel a little scary. People do have anxiety around closeness. And I mentioned this earlier, that you might be second guessing your spouse, you might be doubting yourself. And one of the ways you can check this is with your own self-talk. Is there a lot of negative self-talk coming on when you are potentially going to be very intimate? And this is emotionally or sexually. So check your inner reel of thoughts that are going on, and that will help you know if that is something you're being affected by. And then the last one that could be a sign for you is that you have difficulty receiving love. And internally you're going, really? You really love me that much? No, it must be pretend. You must want something. You must be working an angle. So that is a process. And I know in newlyweds, learning how to be there, especially if there's been an upset and, oh, wait, work together. We are not just ending the relationship because there was an upset. That might be a surprise, but we want it to be an ongoing thing that you can begin to expect your spouse really loves you, and they're not just trying to get something, and they're not just working an angle, but their love is genuine, and it's your role to be able to receive that.
Yeah. And that difficulty to receive love, that was something that I struggled with in the first few years of our marriage. And so for me, it looked like I was trying to disqualify myself before he could disqualify me. So I would say things like, well, if I'm such a bad wife, why are you even married to me still? If I'm such a horrible person, and he'd be over there going, I never said that. I never said that. And so that self-hatred, that low self-esteem showed up, and it was difficult for me to receive my husband's love. And that was a breakthrough moment in our marriage where, the Lord in his graciousness met me through the words of my husband, where he said, do you know how hard it is to love someone who hates themselves so much? And I just went, my eyes were open, the scales fell off, and I realized my inability to receive his love was less to do with him and more to do with what was going on the inside of me. And that sent me on this journey of where I am today. And there are still moments of that I walk through. There are fewer and further between than they've ever been. I'm really grateful for that. But it is really important that we learn that those instances in our childhood create the subconscious belief system that we live out of, whether we want to or not, whether we're trying to power through it. And if we don't look at those things, if we don't go, hey, do I have a fear of vulnerability here? Okay, I think I do. Why? Where is that coming from? Then it is going to keep us in this stuck, dysfunctional cycle with our spouse, and it's going to hinder us from intimacy. So with that, there are other skills that are maybe missed or learned. What are other emotional connection skills learned while growing up?
Right. And I'm going to give these in some big bullet point areas because we could have multiple episodes on even just one stage of upbringing.
Right.
But first, we'll look at the elementary age. We were looking at early childhood before, when it's just that one little child and the world revolves around them. Me, mine. And then in the elementary age, they become aware of other people. And a wonderful thing that can happen is empathy can develop. I remember when my girls were little and they would come home after school and they would tell me about another child. As a matter of fact, one of my girls, she was 3 and loved Friends. I'm like, how is it at such a young age, personalities are so different, but her happiness in life revolved around if her friend came to school. And we didn't know this family, and she came home and she said, Karen Kenny came. Karen Kenny came. And all I heard her say was candy cane. I'm like, what are you saying? Finally, we asked the teacher, and there was another little girl named Karen Kenny, and she came to school. I'm like, oh, thank you for that explanation. But my daughter loved her. They were both 3. They had this relationship, and then she would let me know if they had a fight and what it was about. She was becoming aware of other people. So with that is learning how to repair conflict. Now, that's the ideal. At that age, some children are like, nope, they don't like me. I'm just walking away and getting a new friend. It could go both ways. We want people, though, to begin to learn how to repair conflict as young as possible. Then, as a teenager, this is where they are really coming into their identity. It could be a place of struggle for parents because parents are losing some control, even though they probably never really had control over their child. But the parents' words don't have the same weight by the time your child is a teenager. You're hoping that they are developing and choosing some of those same values. They are getting clear on their worth. And if their parents' words aren't influencing that, it could be the peers that are influencing that. Of course, with all of that is boundaries. What friends are the closest to me? What friends don't seem to really value me? And I know that these years also mark when someone begins to step into leadership. and they see themselves in a different way because of how their friends perceive them. Right. Wonderful skills going on. And then the last age group I'm going to look at is the young adult age, where dating can begin. So now friendships have matured into this other area, romance, and vulnerability starts to open up in a different way. Communication skills. And I know with different personality types, it's not just male and female, but some personality types are more geared towards sharing feelings than other personality types. So learning those differences, and that you might need to do a little more of something, or you might need to expect a little less of something. Those are very subtle, nuanced ideas, but it does begin back in those young dating ages, and you figure out how you can be known, how you want to be known, knowing how much weight does this other person's words have about me, how much weight do my own words about myself count. There is a lot going on. Right. And if you had a stunt in your development at some place along the way, it may pop up as a red flag. But once again, it is not the end of things, or you're not hopeless just because you didn't learn some of these things along the way.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's funny listening to you go through the different age groups. I'm sitting here realizing I have a kid in each age group, and just how different my communication with them. It is still the same consistency, but it is geared with a different goal in mind for their individual stage that they're in. You know, having a daughter who is graduated and, you know, a young adult, my questions to her when she calls to tell me about all of the things that she's thinking about doing is, I said, hey, just curious, are you giving me information, or are you also wanting some of my input on these things? And she responds with, both, please. And I just love that, because there is such a difference in each of these stages. So if you didn't have these things growing up that helped you grow and mature and set you up for success in relationships, and now you're an adult, what do you do if you realize that you didn't get this training?
First of all, I just want to encourage you. God is there for you. He is the creator, and He can recreate within you a desire for some of these things, an aptitude for it, a value for it. So you are not having to do this on your own. And I want you to give yourself permission to learn. As a child, we are used to learning things and new skills and going to school and all of the different stages and responsibilities. And as an adult, learning isn't always as fun, but this could be so significant for you to give yourself grace and choose to learn. It's absolutely going to bring more peace to you as an individual, and certainly to your relationship. So number one, just give yourself permission to learn and have grace as you do that. Realize that nobody does these things automatically. So the effort that you're putting in, someone had to put in similar effort, and will get great results. So you can too. Number two, learn to identify your emotions. If you grew up in a household where emotions were not valued, where they were not encouraged, the only references you might have received would be like, don't cry. Don't be angry. Don't talk about your feelings. I mean, it's a lot of suppressing, and just get over it. And in a crisis moment, maybe you need to shut down, but that we don't live in a crisis. We want to be able to have connection with our emotions. We talk about those emotions a lot, that we don't want them to be in the driver's seat. They're not good masters over us, but they are good indicators as to what's going on. And as adults, we want to know that there are more emotions than I'm fine, or I'm mad, or I'm stressed. There's a whole lot more to explore. If you're curious about a list of emotions, you can Google that really easy, or talk to ChatGPT about what kind of emotion words would be helpful for you to put into your skill set there. Number 3 is pretty interesting as my encouragement for you. Get curious about your life. We're not doing this to blame our parents and, oh, they did this and that's why. We are doing this to grow your awareness. And once again, more awareness brings you peace as an individual. It's a wonderful overflow in your relationship, and you will see benefits even in the workplace if you grow your self-awareness. Also realize that male and female can affect some of this, as well as birth order. So the reason that you get curious about your life, there's a lot of ways that this plays out. These are some questions to consider. What was modeled for you growing up? How did my family handle conflict? Were my emotions welcomed or dismissed? Did I feel safe expressing my needs? What messages did I learn about love, trust, sex, and relationships? Wow, we just gave you about 6 months worth of work there. Those are deep questions for sure.
Yeah, and the goal isn't blame. The goal is awareness. And so we never want to get stuck in the blame game. That keeps us in the victim mindset. Mm-hmm. So, last question for today, but very much not the last question on this topic overall. What does it look like when you want to talk about this with your spouse?
Absolutely. We learn these things as individuals, but then in our marriage, we want to have some common ground with our spouse. So we can go back to the very first questions, those 4 that were really questions, and just have that conversation with your spouse about those 4 questions, because it might explain some of the things you do. It might explain some of the things they do. And this is one of the ways we love to help you, give you super practical things that you can listen to this podcast episode, you can save it, you can share it, and get these questions as something that are just really quick for you to access. And I'm going to give you those 4 questions again. Number 1, is it safe for me to be known? Number 2, will you still love me if I disappoint you? Number 3, can I express what I need? Number 4, do I matter to you? Those are super powerful questions, and they will help build closeness. I also want to say that I have a new tool that I'd love to share for you, and it is 10 simple conversation starters, but it has to do with the conversations about intimacy that you have been avoiding. Because that's the scary zone, or it can be. And I would love to give that to you. So just, you can comment back here or look for the link, that those 10 simple conversation starters, especially if you have been avoiding talking about intimacy.
Yeah. Gosh, Mary, I just really love talking about this stuff with you, and just the practical tools and wisdom that you offer through this process. Thank you, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did. Until next time, let's bring back wholeness.